I think it's a really good topic at the moment to talk about suicide and fashion. I just saw the Alexander McQueen exhibition, and he was always someone that I looked at when I was studying in fashion when I first started, and he was alive and he worked um, within fashion, and he was like a really creative person. And then he did commit suicide, and just at this exhibition I was thinking like how amazing he was and he is, but how the suicide part was never really like pushed out there as a negative thing. It was a really sad thing, and it is a sad thing, but it was never really explored, or and I was studying it at the time, and it was never really explored in a way that was said like, why did he commit suicide? Like, was he so under pressure? Was he sick? And of course we found out why he did, but I think maybe it wasn't glorified in a way, but it definitely shone a light on it that was more romantic than I think it needed to be shown. So I think in terms of the fashion industry showing suicide, I think you have to take it like on a case by case like scenario, I suppose. But I think that there's parts of the fashion industry that glorify, drug use and anorexia and all these problems that they're kind of shown in a way that it's a little bit like shrug your shoulders at it. Like you don't really see that it was a bad thing. It's kind of like a romantic thing, which I think needs to change. I think a lot of things contribute to a young person's mental health issues or stability. It's like where they're from or what they get into. But I think a lot of what you see, it's so easy to get like anything you want from the media these days. You can watch things online, you can look at the Daily Mail, whatever it is. And I think that if you have feelings like you feeling a certain way, I think it's so easy to take those things from the media and like add them to how you're feeling, if you know what I mean. I think that like there's so much bombarding like young people today that if you have like any underlying issue with like your family or something, or you are like unhappy about how you look, there's so many things like outside pressures that really like contribute to those. Success and beauty are really two different things, and depending on what you're doing or what you want to do in life, I don't think they have to be to go hand in hand at all. But I think sometimes people have an ideal like person that they want to be or want to achieve, or they idolize someone, or they look at a celebrity or someone in the fashion industry that they want to be, and actually, you know, it's the package I think that is the goal. And you're always going to look how you're going to look. I mean, you can improve yourself in a healthy way, but I think it's much safer and better to work on a goal like for your success rather than to chase this ideal of having like this whole package. Because I think if you have success and you're happy with where you are, I think then it will all kind of balance out. I think skinny fashion has existed for a long time. I think for me, growing up and today, it's always that's what you see. And whether you're into like high fashion or just like high street shopping, it's like, it's targeted to that kind of girl. So I think there's always that pressure to, if you want to wear that or look like that person, like you must be skinny. And I think that's what most of us feel. And it's kind of always been that way, I think, for sure. I think there's a level of competitiveness and stressfulness like throughout the entire industry, whether you're modeling or designing. And I have a lot of friends in the industry who work the same hours and long hours and kind of put their whole selves into it. And I think there's a real risk of being burnt out or worked kind of overworked, especially when you're young and trying to make it. I think I would change it by making it more of a learning experience to be in the industry, and probably like not having so many pressures on it. I don't really know how you do that. I think it's kind of like person to person, but I don't think you ever really get taught like a healthy working like pace or environment. I think it's always, for me, especially in London, it's always been really extreme all the time. I think if I was to change it, I would, you know, teach someone below me, like to work slower or to actually learn from what they're getting and not be pushed either way or overworked. Yeah, I think so. I think that with like you have all these supermodels and these cool girls like Cara Delevingne, Kendall Jenner, and I think that girls their age really want to be them and they want to live their lifestyle. And if that's like going to certain clubs or acting a certain way or just sort of portraying how they are portrayed in the media, which isn't completely their fault. It's like media's fault and then the fashion industry for putting them as like the poster girls. And I think it does put pressure on girls their age to look that way or act that way, and because they're like the idols of the time, I think so. Definitely, yeah.
I guess the things that would cause, or at least invoke, young people's mental issues, besides general genealogy, will be, the pressures of looking a certain way, acting a certain way in public with their friends, in social groups, whatever it is, and just keeping up with whatever is the standard, just the standard, not even to excel, but just the standard in their daily life, whether that's the way they look or the way they eat or how much exercise they do, what their hair looks like, everything. Yeah, there's far too much pressure for young people to look a certain way. I think the added kind of stress of the internet and everything else, there's far too many ways for people to be poked fun at for the way they look. It's far too many, like there's Instagram and YouTube and Tumblr and all the rest of this. Like everyone's got an opinion, and most of the time, because they can't, there's no face to this. It's just trolling 24/7, and people take that stuff to heart. Nobody wants to look like shit, but there'll always be someone out there that tells you do, and it's not, there's not much you can do about it. But it just, it's just unnecessary. I think it's the same. I think we tend to think that people in the industry aren't consumers when they are. Like there's only, everyone, just because you design some clothes doesn't mean you don't buy other people's clothes. So I think on every level it can affect people in a negative way. It just seems to be a lot more in the general public because there's a lot more of a general public. If I could change the industry, there'd be a lot less brand. It's over the market. Every market now is overcrowded, whether it's premium or high street or whatever. There's too much, so everything's being diluted down. So there's not enough. No one's being paid enough for what they're doing. There's no benefit scheme whatsoever. There's no, like, you're not allowed to be in a union for retail, so you're not protected in any way. Like you can lose your job, in a blink of an eye for nothing.
I think what's dangerous in the fashion industry is that, like, the ideal of what a person should look like and how you should dress and like if you should be skinny or tall and everything. I think that's something that the fashion industry is responsible for, creating an ideal that is not really what a human looks like. I don't think it affects me that much as a menswear designer maybe, but the ideal is like, you always see all the models and stuff, and they don't look like a man, the shape of a man, like on the catwalk. That's not necessarily what the clothes actually should sell or do sell in the shops. But it's obvious, you'll get a kind of the figure of a person is a little bit not what it's realistic all the time. What contributes to a young person's mental health issues? I think the answer is media, social networking, everything. Anything that you get fed during a day, in terms of, if like you're supposed to eat this, or you're supposed to look like this, or these people are wearing this, or you should do this, and there's I think there's not really any way to hide, because with internet and advertising, and like you go on the bus or you look at your phone, and you will constantly have advertising and media kind of seeking you out. So it's really hard to dodge that. And if media creates an ideal of who they think you're supposed to be, and that constantly haunts you. I think most people are affected by that in some way, and if a person maybe not is in a good place, I think it can be quite it can be quite dangerous. So if I change the industry, I think an ideal word for me is like to put a brake on the like consumption wheel, because the fast fashion is far too fast, and we're consuming way more products than we should, than is necessary. High street is constantly pushing out new collections, and like you have companies that does 12 collections in a year. Like usually you do one for spring summer and one for autumn winter, but I think that's starting to become a problem, and we'll see it more and more, because here in the first world, people, media's created a need for something that we actually do not need. And if clothing would be treated as it's supposed to be from the beginning, you take care of your clothes, and the qualities and fabrics and materials would be more sustainable, and you wouldn't buy 5 jackets in a season, you maybe buy one, and you take care of it. That's actually what it's supposed to be from the beginning. But everything is fast, and people wants to make money, and I don't think they always care. But the environment start to see, we get warnings every day, and I think I find it quite scary, because as medias keep on spitting out, the industries keep on like mass producing, with not maybe always, like, it feels like it's not always second thinking about what's gonna come after that, what's happening to next generation. So I think that's a big problem, and something that more and more of the high street companies should take the responsibility. I'm not sure if there's a risk for like glorifying suicide or those kind of thoughts within the fashion industry. I do think that the fashion industry today is considered so important. It becomes more important every day, and more people look into it. And people that can maybe not always necessarily are interested in fashion see fashion today. And like 10, 15, 20 years ago, you only see those fashion if you actually seeked it out, if that makes sense. But I think, like, creatively, and like a designer can have a way of like artistically putting something on a catwalk, and if you put that artistically in a gallery, wouldn't necessarily be the same, because art and fashion is two different things. But I think if you see it on the catwalk, and if you're into fashion, I don't know, maybe it could have something to do with that. But I don't think it glorifies it. But I think maybe people, see and you see and want to be those people in media, and you follow the fashion houses, and then maybe the inspiration comes from something that season. But I don't think it's glorifying. I just think it's like artistic expressions. Too far is when you feel maybe your health, or like you feel like you as a person is starting to like slide off a bit. Then I think like that's a warning.
My name is Lauren Pierce. I'm 24 years old, and I'm head of visual merchandising for Liberty Fashion.
I'm Peter Miller. I'm a retail manager for a company called Wolsey. I work in central London. I'm 32.
My name is Nicolas Ottersten. I'm a menswear designer, and I'm 33 years old and live in London.